UFC Fight Night, Mackenzie Dern, Xiaonan Yan, full card prediction video by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. Of course, he goes by Zahn, I go by Harris, and as usual, we're giving you the full card fight breakdown specifically from that betting perspective. We want to let you know which fights are worth the value, which fights to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action toward the end of the video as well. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. And of course, we want to hear from you in the comments. For this UFC Fight Night event, we have 13 fights overall. 7 of them are on the prelims. 6 of them are on the main card. So we're going to get started right away with fight number 1 of our prelims. We have Guido Cannetti versus Randy Costa. Randy Costa, 2-fight losing streak. He hasn't competed since December 2021. Lost to Tony Kelly at that time. Switch stance fighter. He's a pretty crafty striker. Uses a lot of fakes, feints, pretty unorthodox. Throws off your timing. He's pretty light on the feet. He even had moments in his loss to Adrian Yanez. So that kind of tells you how dynamic he can be as a striker. Has a pretty good head kick. Gotta respect his power as well. You look at his 6 professional wins there. All of them are via KO, TKO. That said, a little bit of a wild striker, a little bit of a high risk, high reward type of fighter. And all of his wins, I mentioned they have all been knockouts. They've also all been very short fights. So you do have to question the cardio of somebody who hasn't really gone deep waters. And if you look at his last fight, again, that Tony Kelly fight, he did slow down a bit after that first round. So again, cardio could be a concern for Randy Costa. Look at Guido Cannetti on the other side of things. He beat Chris Moutinho back in March. 42 years old, of course, is what you have to notice about him first and foremost. He is introduced as a striker. Good movement. He's going to give you a style where he's going to fight from the outside. He's pretty light on the feet, has good kicks, willing to engage if he's backed up enough against the cage. And I mean, he can surprise you with just his speed, his power. You definitely have to be sharp when you're fighting Guido Cannetti, despite the record, despite the age. I think there's a ton of value here on Guido Cannetti as an underdog, again, despite the record, despite the age. I'm looking at this in some ways as a 50-50 fight. I do think that Guido Cannetti is just as capable on the feet here. And more importantly, I do think he has the slight cardio advantage at the very least. That said, Randy Costa, younger fighter in his athletic prime, needs to win more, in my opinion, on the 2-fight losing streak. Of course, he might have a speed and a movement advantage as well in this fight. And then, like I said, most importantly, age. Guido Cannetti, as solid as he's been, age has to catch up at some point. He hasn't really shown it to catch up, but again, Randy Costa, speed and movement advantages on the feet. I can see him being a little bit more dynamic here. So I am going to go with Randy Costa to get things started, but I will say minus 300, way too steep for me. I'm not interested in betting on this one.
Yeah, there's a lot of red flags in this. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, there's a lot of red flags in this fight. When I was reviewing the fight here, Costa, he looks good early in these fights, and then second round, and that's not just the UFC. If you go down his record, yeah, his wins are in the first round, and then the second rounds is when he loses these, and all 3 of his losses are in that second round. All of his wins are in that first round. So it looks like it's going to go a situation where if Costa can get him out of there early, he'll obviously win the fight. But as the fight goes on, it shows that his cardio really suffers as the fight goes on. But Cannetti's old, man, and he's not really that good as far as UFC level. I know he looked good against Moutinho. He's no longer in the UFC. I like Costa here, man. I think he's gonna be able to style him in that first round. I think Cannetti's gonna leave himself open here. I think he gets knocked out. So I'm gonna go with Randy Costa, win that first round, get a knockout. As the fight goes on, it's gonna get sketchy. That's why I understand Harris saying that the odds doesn't make sense here, because based on history, as the fight goes on, Costa loses these fights after it leaves the first round. But I'm going to trust him in this spot against a 45-year-old guy. Is he 45?
42.
42. Okay, my bad. So I'm gonna trust Costa here, the youth, and I think he gets it done in that first round.
Second fight of our prelims, we're looking at Julija Stoliarenko versus Chelsea Chandler. Stoliarenko beat Jessica Rose Clark back in July. She has that brawling type of style in terms of her stand up, not really too much technique involved. Boxing kind of looks improved, but her sort of main MO, despite the numbers, she can land takedowns. I know we only see half a takedown per fight there. Um, but ultimately, her goal is to try to get the fight to the ground, right? So she is willing to pull guard as well, attempt those arm bars, attempt those leg locks. Her grappling, her submission attempts, they are a legitimate threat. She actually has 11 professional wins. I think a little bit inaccurate there from what we're seeing, but 10 of those 11 professional wins have come via submission, of course, including her last fight to Jessica Rose Clark. So legitimate submission threat, but cardio for her has been a huge problem for her. So again, look for her to slow down really after that first round, maybe even that first half of that first round. Chelsea Chandler, on the other hand, making her UFC debut. She's on a 4-fight win streak in Invicta, having last competed in May. We know that Invicta is a pretty legitimate promotion in terms of translating to UFC talent. She's a southpaw. She has pretty decent MMA boxing, good combinations, good punching power as well, great pace on her strikes. She will walk you down a little bit too. She's pretty tough from what I'm seeing. She can land the takedown. She has ground IQ, decent top control, and I am pretty satisfied with her cardio. I've seen her push a high pace for 3 rounds here in her fights, which is going to be a huge advantage for her here. I do think Chandler is the smarter pick. I know she's a newcomer. I know you always got to be weary about newcomers. But this is a pick'em fight, even on both sides. I think Chandler is the smarter pick because although Stoliarenko is always dangerous with her submission, the idea here is that, at least on paper, Chelsea Chandler's ground game is hopefully good enough to stay out of danger. And I think while Chandler has a bit of a brawling element to her own style, I do believe that she is a much better striker than Julia Stoliarenko. And I think Stoliarenko's striking improvements is actually going to work against her because she might try to test the striking a little bit of Chandler. And that may potentially get her hurt early in the fight. Not a confident pick at all. Of course, it's a newcomer. It's a women's fight. Stoliarenko is very live. But I am going to go with Chelsea Chandler on this one.
Okay, so Stoliarenko looked good in her last fight. She looked really good, but again, it's a competition, and she won with her trademark armbar. So I think that's what she's gonna be looking for in this fight. Chandler, I liked her hands. I seen she doesn't have the best boxing, but her left, I seen her lay a girl down with that left hand, and I was impressed. Usually you don't see those type of shots coming from these females, and she knocked her down and looked really good. So that's going to be on her side, the power advantage. I think she's the better striker as well, but both are. It's gonna be a sloppy striking exchange, so anyone can win those exchanges. But Chandler kind of lines you up for that left, and again, there's a lot of power in that. But Chandler's a really good grappler, and we know that Stoliarenko is going to need to. She wants to get that armbar. It's going to be hard to get against Chelsea Chandler. She trains with Diaz. Right out of college, she went to the Diaz Academy. Now she's 28. So she's definitely been grappling, and she looks good when she's on top. She looks good in grappling exchanges. I think she can kind of win the fight in both areas. Avoid the armbar, and I think Chandler gets this done. So I'm going to go Chandler. Just having the more devastating stand-up, the more precise stand-up, and then having the grappling advantage. I think she will have in this fight. But again, the grappling will be close, but I think Chandler is a bit better at that in that area. So Chandler's my pick to get this one done. Who's the favorite, may I ask?
This is a pick'em, -110 on each side.
Makes sense. Okay, got it.
Moving on to the third fight of our prelims, we have Maxim Grishin versus Philipe Lins. Maxim Grishin beat William Knight back in February. He's introduced as a striker, patient striker at that. Sometimes too patient, doesn't really have the highest work rate, but the striking is pretty clean. He fights at range. He'll kind of chip away. He'll look to keep the fight on the feet for sure. He has a decent jab to go with it, decent movement, decent IQ, and again, just with the striking overall. Um, it kind of just comes one at a time with Grishin, though. He doesn't really throw too many combinations that could sometimes work against him. Philipe Lins, on the other hand, unanimous decision win over Marcin Prachnio. That was back in April. Looked pretty solid in his return to light heavyweight. He was fighting at heavyweight for a while where he didn't look the best. He's also introduced as a striker. We know that Philipe Lins has solid stand up, has a good long jab. He can put some good combinations together. Look for him to control the center of the octagon. Look for him to be that fighter closing distance, especially against a Grishin type fighter who has decent movement and who has probably better movement than Philipe Lins does. And Philipe Lins also showed in his last fight that he is willing to attempt takedowns. Landed 4 of them in his last fight. So almost a don't forget that he can do that as well. I do think that most of this fight occurs on the feet, though. I do believe Philipe Lins is the more dangerous striker of the two. He also adds, of course, the grappling and the takedown advantage, at least in my opinion. But I do believe Maxim Grishin's takedown defense should be good enough to, again, stop most of those attempts if they come, to the point of me mentioning that I do think most of this fight occurs on the feet. Now, in terms of the striking, again, I do believe Philipe Lins could be the more dangerous of the two strikers, but I do believe that Maxim Grishin's striking is better overall. I think it's cleaner. I think the footwork is better. And I think that's what's going to lead to Maxim Grishin winning those striking exchanges. Now, will Maxim Grishin do enough to impress the judges? That's where I can see a potential problem for him, just with his style and Philipe Lins being potentially having the bigger striking moments. But I do believe, again, he will be the better striker here in a fight that should stay on the feet. So if it's judged correctly, I do think Maxim Grishin should get the job done. So he is going to be my pick. But again, this fight, in some ways, especially at these higher weight classes, it can go either way. But again, Maxim Grishin is going to be my pick.
Okay, so I'm going with Maxim Grishin as well. I look at this fight. Philipe Lins has the power. He throws a lot of power in the first round, especially. Whereas it seems like to me that Philipe Lins needs to get him out early, because I think as the fight goes on, Grishin's going to have that cardio advantage, and the striking's close. But I like Grishin's jab. I like his clinching. I actually think Grishin has. I think he's just a better grappler than Lins. Better cardio tank. I think as the fight goes on, he survives that first round. I think Grishin's gonna win the next 2 rounds clearly. So I'm gonna go with Maxim Grishin. First round's really close, can go either way, but I think second, third round, Grishin's gonna edge away here and get a win here.
Fight number 4 of our prelims, we have Krzysztof Jotko versus Brendan Allen. A good middleweight fight here. Brendan Allen had a unanimous decision win over Jacob Malkoun back in June. We know him to be a pretty well-rounded fighter, right? The striking has looked a lot more technically sound on a fight-by-fight basis. He's showing the striking diversity as well. A lot of fakes and feints in his style. Pretty good kicks, mixes them up pretty well. His hands, again, look cleaner, crisper. The combinations look improved as well. We know his grappling ability. We know his wrestling ability. Lands just over a takedown per fight. Just 50% takedown defense as well. So he is kind of vulnerable there. But when he does get on top, again, with that 1.2 takedowns per fight, he's good on top. He has a good mix of grappling and ground and pound. Again, just a really good, well-rounded fighter. Facing off against Krzysztof Jotko, who beat Gerald Meerschaert back in April. He's a southpaw in terms of his striking, good in and out movement. He's pretty light on the feet. Look for him to fight from the outside. Definitely a decent striker from distance. He can find himself on the back foot a lot, though. Doesn't really like to engage unless he has to. So those can be potential eye test red flags against him in terms of the eyes of the judges. In terms of his takedowns, kind of similar to Brendan Allen, right around that 1.2, 1.3 takedown per fight average. And a lot of that had to do with his last fight. He landed 4 takedowns in his last fight. So I wouldn't necessarily call him a wrestler, or maybe it's something new that he's implementing in his style. That's what we're going to have to wait and see in terms of what happens here. He does have a legitimate 83% takedown defense, which will be very relevant in this fight, I feel. Very close fight here. And obviously the odds prove that. I do think both guys can have moments on the feet. I think Krzysztof Jotko might be a bit quicker on the feet, but I do think Brendan Allen will have the better striking diversity. Krzysztof Jotko, of course, legitimate takedown defense. So Brendan Allen might not be able to land those takedowns. On the flip side, it is possible, again, if Krzysztof Jotko is starting to include takedowns in his game, it is possible that he can land a takedown or two against Brendan Allen. Although I don't think it'll lead to anything. I think Brendan Allen will get up right away in those moments. So there's reasons why I can see Krzysztof Jotko is the slight favorite in this fight. But that said, I like Brendan Allen here. I feel like Brendan Allen has proven himself a little bit more in striking matches against fighters who can actually strike against, compared to what Krzysztof Jotko has done. Again, Krzysztof Jotko, legitimate chance. I mean, he is the slight favorite in this one, but kind of a gut pick here. I really like the underdog odds for Brendan Allen. When I saw this fight, I assumed Brendan Allen would be the favorite. So to see him as the underdog, my gut is loving these odds. My gut has to jump on that. So I'm going with the underdog, Brendan Allen.
Okay, I'm rolling with Jotko in this spot, man. I think both guys are grapplers. Both guys can grapple. I think Brendan's the dangerous grappler in terms of locking up submissions. But as far as positional control, I think Jotko, I'm not saying he's better than Allen in that area, but I think he can hold his own. I think he can win some of these scrambles. I think on the feet, I think Jotko is more composed. I think he's the more technical striker, and he knows how to win. This guy's 24 wins, 5 losses. It's gonna be a tough fight. I think this fight is one of the harder fights to pick. But I like Jotko in this spot here, man, keeping it on the feet and outstriking Brendan Allen, frustrating him, even getting him taking him down, and getting some top game going. But yeah, I think Jotko gets it done. I think at this point, I just think he is a bit better.
Fight number 5 of our prelims, we're looking at Joaquim Silva versus Jesse Ronson. For Joaquim Silva, 2-fight losing streak, hasn't competed since June 2021. So quite a while, quite a long layoff. Has a good amount of power, good power punches, especially in those hooks. Solid on the feet, mixes it up well. He can definitely be explosive. He's kind of light on his feet. Again, has that good in and out movement. A little bit out of control sometimes, though. Also doesn't really have the best takedown defense. So, has some vulnerabilities to his game. Doesn't really bring the fight to the ground. I mean, we see the numbers there, 0.23 takedowns per. If he finds his way on top, I do like when he's on top, though, because he is a good grappler. But again, stylistically, he keeps it on the feet. Also, you look at his last 2 fights, maybe luck of the draw, or it may be the fact that he's a bit chinny at this point. But of course, he was knocked out in his last 2 fights. So 2 knockouts, long layoff. You get a little bit concerned there in terms of if you're on the betting side for Joaquim Silva. Going up against Jesse Ronson, though, who lost to Rafa Garcia back in April. He's a southpaw. He has decent hands. He's pretty technically sound with his striking, good movement, good footwork. A little bit stiff, though. Look for him to control the center of the octagon. He's going to kind of eat shots in favor of trying to apply pressure. Doesn't really have the best takedown defense either. On top of that, he also wants to keep the fight on the feet. I think this is a relatively low-level fight here. Neither of these guys, I think, really have an intentional plan of attack. Neither of these guys are guys that I would feel confident betting on. So I'm definitely staying far away from this fight as far as betting goes. But in terms of making a pick, I will be picking the underdog Jesse Ronson in this one. I feel they both possess punching power, but Ronson's striking style, I think it's cleaner, a little bit more reliable, more consistent pressure as well. And again, I'm concerned for Joaquim Silva's chin after being knocked out in his last 2 fights, after now almost a 1.5 year layoff. Jesse Ronson could hurt him. I'm not going to bet Jesse Ronson on a knockout, but I can very much see that happening. So I'm going to go with the underdog, Jesse Ronson, to get it done. But again, from a betting perspective, I'm staying far away from this one.
Yeah, I like Silva in this spot, man. Ronson, I think he has holes with the grappling, and I think Silva can exploit that. I think Silva has a big advantage with the grappling, getting the takedown. Silva getting on top, using his jiu-jitsu. I think he can win. I think he can hold him down there for a whole round. I think he has that advantage here. And on the feet, I'm not sold on Ronson. Yes, he has ability, but I think Silva's the more athletic guy, the quicker guy. I think he's going to beat him in the stand-up area as well this weekend. So I'm going to go with Silva, man. I like him. I like his grappling in this spot. I like his striking. Obviously, the concern is him getting knocked out. But I don't think Ronson is that guy. He's 36. He definitely has the ability to knock Silva out. But I'm going to roll the dice, man, and go with Joaquim Silva, avoiding the knockout, using some grappling, more well-rounded guy. And I think he gets a win in this spot. So I like Joaquim Silva here being the better fighter.
Fight number 6 of our prelims, we're looking at Jessica Penne versus Tabatha Ricci. Jessica Penne lost to Emily Ducote back in July. 39 years old. She's tall. She's long for the division. She has improved striking, a bit more fluid, better combinations, quicker combinations, has a solid jab, I would say at this point. Kind of a Muay Thai style of stand-up, has a good Thai clinch as well. Still a fairly average level of stand-up though, at best. I think her last fight was kind of a reminder of that. Does have a solid clinch, I mentioned that, and she kind of uses that to lead to some takedown opportunities for her. You see her takedown numbers there at almost 1.5 per fight, although the takedown accuracy is pretty low. But ultimately a grappling specialist, I would say. Kind of has tricky grappling. She is a BJJ black belt. She's crafty on top. So you got to be careful. She can potentially even look for submission opportunities and different things like that. She can definitely be tricky with her grappling. But she's going up against Tabatha Ricci, who I don't think is the best matchup for her. Tabatha Ricci 2-fight win streak after beating Polyana Viana back in May. Her background is introduced as judo and jiu-jitsu. And that's kind of why I feel like this is not the best matchup for Jessica Penne. Tabatha Ricci is serviceable on the feet. She is a southpaw. She has decent movement. She has decent combinations. Her strength on the feet is in her pace and in her aggression. She's not afraid to engage. She's not afraid to create the offense. Her strength overall, again, to the point of how she's introduced, is in her ground game. She is a grappler. She can also land a takedown, though. She has that pressure on the feet to then lead to that takedown attempt. She has good, smart positional control on top as well, and good submissions to go along with it. I think Penne just doesn't really offer much in terms of a game plan, especially in a fight like this. At this point in her career, I just don't think she can really hang with those younger fighters who are a little bit more well versed all around. I also think Tabatha Ricci's aggressiveness, explosiveness, and cardio could be a problem for Jessica Penne. So I really like Tabatha Ricci in this spot. Might be a parlay piece here. Tabatha Ricci is going to be my pick.
Yeah, I'm going with Ricci as well. I think her grappling it's gonna be a grappling match, and most of the fights will be grappling. And Tabatha Ricci, I think, is gonna be the better grappler. She's gonna be able to dictate with her wrestling, with her judo, and I think she has enough to stay out of danger from Penny's pretty good ground game as well, fighting off her back. So Penny can definitely pull off the upset. That's what she does. But I just think Tabatha Ricci dictate the fight with the takedowns, and I think she gets a win here, a unanimous type of decision here.
All right, let's move on to the final fight of our prelims. In that case, we have Ilir Latifi versus Aleksei Oleinik. Aleksei Oleinik beat Jared Vanderaa back in April. 45 years old at this point. Probably would have retired if he lost his last fight, but again, pulled out the win. He's not the biggest heavyweight. He weighs in, I should say, around 240 pounds. In terms of his stand-up, definitely awkward. Kind of just walks forward. He's willing to brawl. Definitely has some pop in those looping hooks. Telegraphs it quite a bit. But he can put some combinations together with some pretty decent accuracy. Ultimately, though, he's going to try to punch his way into a clinch situation. He has a lot of grappling accolades. We know he's a really good grappler. We know, he's the Ezekiel choke king. Of his 60 wins, 47 of them are via submission, which is nuts. 2 takedowns per fight as well. So can definitely legitimately land it. 46% accuracy. I don't necessarily think he's the best wrestler. That said, though, Ilir Latifi, almost a year and a half since his last fight. That was a split decision win versus Tanner Boser. Shorter, stockier for the division. He's gonna, be at a height and reach disadvantage usually in his fights, and that is the case here as well. He's a former Swedish national team wrestler. Wrestling is where his strength is at. That's where he's going to find his advantages. He's trained a lot with Daniel Cormier as an example. 2 takedowns per fight over 14 UFC fights. So that tells you he's legitimately good at it throughout his career. And on the feet, not really the most active striker, but he has power, has a sharp calf kick to go along with it. He's going to switch stance a lot. And sometimes he is going to eat shots in favor of kind of landing that clinch situation, pushing you up against the cage, and then, of course, looking for that takedown. I'm not really expecting much activity on the feet in this fight. I think either guy, unsurprisingly, it's a heavyweight beware. Either guy can knock out the other. I do feel Latifi is the stronger wrestler, but Oleinik's grappling is better, right? So it is going to be kind of wrestler versus grappler, which is interesting. But I do think Latifi can avoid that grappling threat that Oleinik would provide in terms of having a wrestling advantage. I can see kind of like a lay and pray type of style from Latifi as opposed to vicious ground and pound, potentially getting caught, getting his arm caught, getting his leg caught, something like that. Sort of the way that like we saw with Latifi versus Tanner Boser. I can kind of see the same thing happening here. And especially because Oleinik doesn't really have the best takedown defense. So I do think Latifi's takedowns will be the difference. I do think he will land it in all 3 rounds. I do think he'll have top control for a majority of all 3 rounds. So Ilir Latifi is going to be my pick to get it done. It still is a heavyweight beware. I'm not saying confidently throw this on parlays, but Ilir Latifi is going to be my pick nonetheless.
Yeah, this is a fight that I see that can go either way. I think Latifi can hurt him on the feet, and I think Latifi can get hurt on the feet as well. I think both guys in this spot can hurt each other on the feet. I don't think they have the best striking defense. They're big guys, 240 pounds, so it could be a matter of who hits who first. But I think that Latifi has to be careful here because Oleinik is really good with these chokes, and once he gets to the neck, he's able to submit these guys, right? Regardless of age, he has a really good grip. It's almost once he gets it, the fight's over. But Latifi has never been submitted. And in this fight, he's going to have the ability to kind of dictate where the fight goes. They're both old guys, but Oleinik's 46. I got to go with Latifi here. Avoiding the submissions. Again, he's never been submitted. But again, this is a big test. Oleinik is no joke with his grappling. But I think Latifi gets it done. The younger guy, I think Oleinik, he's kind of slow. He might get hurt in the striking area. He might get hit with an overhand. Yeah, I like Latifi here to get it done here. There's a lot of red flags on the Oleinik side. So I'm going to go Latifi here to get the win.
All right, let's move on to our main card, starting with the first fight, Mike Davis versus Viacheslav Borshchev. For Mike Davis, he hasn't competed since January 2021. He beat Mason Jones at that time. He's an explosive striker, an aggressive striker, decent movement. Definitely look for him to press forward with that explosiveness and a diverse striker at that. He has a good jab. He has really good hands. I think he trained with at Mayweather's gym for quite a while, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that, or with Custamato or something. Custamato's gym, I should say. Also, he can land a few takedowns in each of his UFC wins. So not only does he have the striking, but he does have that ability to potentially land takedowns as well. I wouldn't really count it on being a stylistic approach of his, but takedown numbers are there. With that explosive striking style that he has, you are going to see fatigue issues. Definitely starts to slow down like we saw in that Mason Jones fight, but he won the fight, right? So despite the cardio issues, that tells you he has enough heart to still win rounds. If I remember correctly, I thought Mason Jones won that fight for what it's worth, but again, he pulled out the decision, and that's all that matters. For Borshchev, lost to Mark Jacasey back in March. Good sharp jab. It's well timed. It's accurate. He uses it regularly. He's a good counter puncher as well. Nasty combinations too. Good lateral movement. Good kicks too as an overall kickboxer. But again, I really like the hands specifically. And 5 of his 6 wins are via KO TKO, so he does have legitimate power behind him. It's going to be interesting to see if Mike Davis resorts to takedowns, because Borshchev specifically just does not have the best takedown defense. I can see why Mike Davis is a favorite here. He definitely has advantages on the ground, at least in terms of landing the takedown. And again, the striking, I think, is just as dangerous as Borshchev's is. So he definitely checks more boxes. But I'm feeling the underdog here. I'm feeling Viacheslav, Borshchev. Firstly, fighters perform, better in their second UFC fight compared to their debut. I know it's kind of a wonky stat, but that could be the case here. Also with Mike Davis, yes, he can land takedowns, but stylistically, again, I wouldn't really consider him a wrestler. I don't know if he's going to resort to takedowns for all 3 rounds. Again, given his cardio concerns. And in terms of the striking, like I said, I think they are both dangerous, but I feel like Borshchev's striking style, again, I'm always going to go for the guy that has a slightly cleaner style. And specifically in this case, Borshchev is a really good counterpuncher. So again, this is a close fight. The favorite checks more boxes, but I am going to go with the underdog. Viacheslav, Borshchev is going to be my pick.
I like Mike Davis in this spot, man. I'm not gonna lie, I like him here because he's the type of guy that likes wars. Borshchev wants a war as well. But Mike's a smart fighter, man. He's gonna get this taken to the mat. He's gonna utilize that grappling. He's kind of drain out Borshchev's cardio. And I see as the fight goes on, I think Davis is gonna be more dominant in these rounds. Davis survives that first round. I think this is Mike Davis's fight. But I think Mike Davis can even win all 3 rounds with that grappling advantage. So I'm going to go with Mike Davis in this spot here, avoiding the. Because remember, this guy, before I finish, remember Mike Davis stood toe to toe with Sodiq Yusuff. Sodiq Yusuff has power on Dana White Contender Series. Good fight, good battle. He lost, but he wasn't able to utilize that grappling. In this fight, he's going to be able to go to that avenue. And I think he gets this taken to the mat. So I'm going to go Mike Davis, utilize that wrestling, and get the win here.
Second fight of our main card, we have John Castañeda versus Daniel Santos. For John Castañeda, 2-fight winning streak. He beat Miles Johns back in February. Southpaw, some switch stance as well. Good stand-up, good in-and-out movement, low kicks, tie kicks, decent boxing, decent counter-punching as well. He's going to keep a healthy distance from his opponent. He's going to fight from range pretty effectively. He's going to use those fakes and feints, stance switches as well to be that fighter coming forward as needed. Just overall, a clean style of stand-up. Has great cardio as well. He's going to move at the same pace the entire fight. Just a solid overall striker. Daniel Santos, on the other hand, lost to Julio Arce. That was his April debut. He's introduced as a Muay Thai kickboxer, so that lets you know who he is stylistically. Looks like he likes to come forward. Looks like he likes to put on that good pressure, that continuous pressure, that continuous pace. We saw it in the Julio Arce fight as well that we lost that one. Looks like he lacks some technique in his punches. He's a little bit wild. He does put combinations together decently, primarily his hands, although he also has a few finishes via spinning kick. But again, just not really the cleanest striker in terms of his technique. I'm pretty much John Castaneda all the way on this one. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this fight goes very similarly to Daniel Santos's debut versus Julio Arce. In that fight, Julio Arce was the cleaner striker, the higher level striker against Daniel Santos. He also capitalized on counter punching opportunities. I believe the same for John Castaneda for this fight. But with Castaneda, you also add, in my opinion, quicker footwork in comparison to Julio Arce. You also add the ability to be that fighter coming forward, because again, Julio Arce was doing a lot of fighting from the outside in that one. But again, I mean, I think bad matchup for Santos. It's more or less the same fight as his debut, and I can more or less see the same results. So I'm going with John Castaneda on this one. minus 190. I feel pretty solid about that. I want to see how these guys look come face off time, and this might be a parlay piece for me.
Yeah, for me, this is a more dangerous fight, man. I think Santos is a dangerous guy. This can be a stand-up war, and Santos throws heavy, and he is on the front foot, marching his fighters down. Yeah, for me, it's a tough fight. Castañeda definitely looks good in the striking as well. I think Castañeda is technically the better striker, but I'm looking at Santos in terms of his fight style. He swarms you, right? So he's a tough guy, right? So this could be a matter of who lands first, and I think Santos is super live in this spot, albeit all of that. I got to go with Castaneda just because of the more well-rounded game. Again, you highlighted his footwork. He has really good footwork, good counters, and he has wrestling. He has the much better wrestling in this fight that he can easily take him down for the last minute or two of each round. So because of his well-roundedness, I got to go with Castaneda, but I think Daniel Santos, I wouldn't be surprised he lands and finishes Castaneda at all. But Castaneda is my pick.
Third fight of our main card, Sodiq Yusuff versus the newcomer Don Shainis. Sodiq Yusuff beat Alex Caceres back in March. Good jab, good pace, good patience. He picks his shots pretty well. We've seen him use that jab as a weapon before. Has, again, moves at a pretty good pace. You see the striking numbers there. He's a pretty quick striker. He's good at cutting the ring off. He's good at putting on a consistent pressure, closing distance, almost stalking his opponents at times. Very explosive as well. Very much a striker. You don't expect really takedowns from him. And I also really like that he moves at a pretty steady pace throughout the entire fight. Stays pretty consistent in terms of the pace that he moves at. Don Shainis, I mentioned, is a UFC newcomer. He's on a 5-fight winning streak. He last competed back in June. You look at his record there, 12-3. 8 of those 12 wins are via KO TKO. So that's the first thing I want to highlight. He's a good striker from what I'm seeing. Good power. He wants to push the pressure. He wants to close distance. He has, pretty solid ground IQ as well. Look for him essentially on the feet to come forward, put the pressure, put the pace, close the distance, and then look for that takedown. Has solid ground and pound. He knows how to maintain top control. The activity on the ground is really good. With his pace, naturally, you are going to see him slow down toward the end of the fight, but he can definitely still be explosive at any time. I think there's a lot of things to like about Don Shainis as a newcomer in the UFC. He's been effective at implementing his style in his fights. But honestly, I think Sodiq Yusuff is just too tough of a debut for Don Shainis. You think about Sodiq Yusuff, he was supposed to fight Giga Chikadze, and that was only a few weeks ago on the Corey Sandhagen card. But Giga had pulled out of that one. So that kind of tells you at least what the UFC thinks about Sodiq Yusuff. Shainis, on the other hand, again, I like what I see, but just not really the biggest for this featherweight division. 5'6", 66-inch reach. So he's going to be physically disadvantaged in this one. Sodiq Yusuff's going to have about 5 inches in reach on him, about 3 inches in height. And although Yusuff's takedown defense is kind of average for the most part, I don't think Don Shainis is going to be able to implement that style that he's been able to leading up to his UFC debut. I think Yusuff will be able to keep the fight on the feet. I think he's more controlled, more IQ with the striking, plus the UFC experience, very invaluable. Again, plus where he's at. I mean, he's pretty much I forget if he's ranked or not, but he's one of those fighters that are looking to face ranked guys, and he's facing a newcomer. So hard for me to go with the newcomer. That said, Sodiq Yusuff minus 900. I'm not interested because a fight is still a fight. Or maybe I throw it on a parlay. I don't know. But Sodiq Yusuff, nonetheless, is going to be my pick. I feel pretty confident about it.
Yeah, this is remember Don is coming in short notice, right? So that's a big thing because Don needs to get his grappling going for 3 rounds to really get a win in this spot. Yusuff is hard to take down, strong hips, levels. He has much better striking. This is an easy spot here for Yusuff. But yeah, these odds are crazy. But Yusuff definitely gets this one done.
All right, let's move on then to our fourth fight of the main card. We have Raoni Barcelos versus Trevin Jones. Raoni Barcelos, 2-fight losing streak. He lost to Victor Henry back in January. Very good fighter on paper, despite the losing streak. Very credentialed. He's good in the stand-up. He has, a good front kick, good up kick, good calf kicks. The hands are pretty solid as well. The boxing is pretty good. Very sharp striker. Has heavy, accurate strikes too. He has a good clinch, good takedowns, over 1.5 per fight, good wrestling, expert grappler as well, specifically. And in terms of trying to take him down, he has 93% takedown defense. So that tells you that the fight is usually going to occur where he wants it to occur. Trevin Jones, on the other hand, 2-fight losing streak as well. He lost to Javid Basharat back in March. Trevin Jones is also a well-rounded fighter, good stand-up. He's a southpaw. He's always dangerous. He's always in a close fight. He's always live, whether he's a dog or not. Good kickboxing, has decent hands, good movement, good combinations. Again, good pace, willing to engage. The power is definitely something that he has, and he has toughness and he has heart as well. Has some wrestling. He's also a BJJ black belt. And again, I mean, just a number of his losses as well, and even some of his wins, they've been via split decision. So, expect him to be in a close fight no matter who he's up against. A lot of people like Raoni Barcelos in this one. So do I. But Trevin Jones, I do think, is pretty live as a dog. Trevin Jones, I mean, let's face it, he can hurt anyone, despite Raoni Barcelos never being knocked out before. Again, Trevin Jones, pretty well-rounded. He has solid wrestling, despite Barcelos, again, being great on the feet and having excellent takedown defense. But ultimately, it's those factors that I mentioned about Barcelos that make me feel pretty good about Barcelos in this spot. I feel like he's a higher level striker. And I also feel like he can keep the fight standing for as long as he wants. Also at 71% takedown defense on the side of Trevin Jones, Trevin Jones might be able to be taken down by Raoni Barcelos if he wants to go in that route. I can see this potentially being a close fight. I can see Trevin Jones potentially hurting Raoni Barcelos. So that's where I say, there are moments where Trevin Jones can be live. But I can also see this fight being Raoni Barcelos running away with a 30-27 unanimous decision. So that's kind of the route that I do think it'll go in. I think Barcelos will avoid that kind of early threat that Trevin Jones is, and being the higher level striker. Not that Trevin Jones will ever give up, but I think Raoni Barcelos can put a level of striking on Trevin Jones where Trevin Jones realizes that, hey, I'm probably not going to win this one. So Raoni Barcelos is going to be my pick, but Trevin Jones is always someone that's tough to bet against. But nonetheless, Raoni Barcelos, I'm going with.
Yeah, this is a good scrap, man. But I'm going with Barcelos, man. More activity in the striking. He should be winning every minute of the fight, unless Trevin lands one of those heavy shots, right? So Trevin definitely can put the lights out at any point. But I think Raoni gets back in the win column here, fighting a guy that he knows what he wants to do. It's not a tricky opponent. Trevin Jones is tough as hell. But Barcelos has never been knocked out, and that's kind of the path that Trevin needs to go to win the fight. Again, he can win the fight, but I like Barcelos. I think he has more avenues, more paths to win here. I think when it comes to the wrestling, I think Barcelos would be the one to get the takedowns. And I think when it comes to the stand-up, Barcelos has the better stand-up, has power as well. Stay out of danger. I think Barcelos gets it done. But again, that power on Trevin's side is something to watch. So you got to be careful of that heavy right hand. But I think Barcelos can take the shot, and he gets the win in this spot.
Co-main event of the evening, we're looking at Randy Brown versus Francisco Trinaldo. Randy Brown, 3-fight win streak after a split decision win versus Chaos Williams. That was back in May. Tall, long, especially for this welterweight division. We know that at this point about Randy Brown. Long front kicks, long jab. He's an explosive striker, a dynamic striker. Good, quick combination, solid movement too. 11 of his 15 wins are via finish. 6 of them KO TKO, 5 of them submission. So he has a pretty high finish rate. He's been really good ever since his amateur career at finding those guillotine and and rear naked choke opportunities as well. That's where a lot of the submission wins come from. Just really overall a good overall fighter, legitimate prospect in this welterweight division, someone to look out for, almost a dark horse in the division in some ways. Francisco Trinaldo, 2-fight win streak after beating Danny Roberts back in May. Still going at 44 years old. I think there's, 3 fighters in their 40s on this card. But nonetheless, Francisco Trinaldo is a kickboxer, BJJ practitioner as well. Southpaw to stand up, heavy striking with the hands and with the kicks, especially with that left straight punch that he has. A solid clinch, solid takedowns. He's good on top. Just a good overall veteran fighter. Has good IQ as well. Randy Brown, I'll be honest, I'll keep this short. Randy Brown might be my pick of the night at these odds, minus 310. Not even money, but nonetheless, a lot more value on Randy Brown than I thought there would be. I think Randy Brown, I mean, what we know is that he's going to have a 6-inch height advantage in this fight, an 8-inch reach advantage in this fight as well. I think that's going to be major, given his long jab, given those front kicks, given his movement. You can kind of stay out of the danger of Trinaldo, keep him at range, things like that. Randy Brown's takedown defense as well, I think, is good enough where this fight stays on the feet, right? Even as Trinaldo potentially closes distance, I don't think he gets those takedowns landed. I think that height and that reach will be a problem to see if he's even able to close distance, right? Ultimately, I think Randy Brown is kind of establishing himself as a serious player in this division. And I think Francisco Trinaldo is just another stepping stone for him. Yes, there's reasons on paper to like Trinaldo, or like factors of Trinaldo for this fight. But you look at the overall landscape, Randy Brown, 32 years old, athletic prime. Francisco Trinaldo, 44 years old. Randy Brown, huge height and reach advantages. Yeah, I'm Randy Brown all day on this one.
Yeah, this is a Randy Brown spot, but Francisco's not going to make it easy. This guy, no one can walk over this guy. You gotta go through hell to get a win against Francisco Trinaldo. He has power as well. He hasn't shown that he's slowing down. Really good left hand. When in the striking, he can definitely find success, man. Brown is kind of nonchalant at some points in these fights, because the fight's kind of getting easy to him. But I gotta go with Brown, man, the much younger guy on a win streak in his division. Trinaldo, yes, he's fought a couple fights here, but again, his whole career was at 155. 44 years old. Yeah, I like Randy Brown. The UFC wants him to win this spot here, winning this spot. Because again, he's another guy that's coming up, right? That's good. One of the better fighters out of Jamaica in the UFC as well. I like Randy Brown here. I think the UFC wants him to win, but Trinaldo is not going to make it easy. So definitely Trinaldo is live. Definitely can knock out Randy Brown. Randy Brown has a small looking chin. He has a small head, so Trinaldo can definitely crack. But I'm going to go with Randy Brown, just having a more well-rounded game at this point. The quicker guy, the bigger guy, in his correct division. So Randy Brown's my pick.
All right, let's move on to the main event of the evening. We have Mackenzie Dern versus Yan Xiaonan. Mackenzie Dern split decision win over Tecia Torres back in April. We know her MO at this point. She's a grappling specialist. The striking is improved. It's a little bit cleaner. It's a little bit crisper. Still has that brawling component to it though. But she does look to put the pressure on. She does look to put the pace on with her striking, and her cardio has looked really good in terms of kind of maintaining that style on the feet. She will, look for those takedowns in clinch situations after kind of pushing the pressure and the pace enough to kind of get you on the cage. But you look at the numbers there, 0.46 takedowns per fight, 9% accuracy, just really bad in terms of actually being able to land a takedown. But she is a fighter that's going to try to get the fight to the mat by any means necessary. She'll pull guard if she has to. She'll let you take her down if she has to, because we know on the ground she's very dangerous, right? She's great at making positional improvements. She's good at, even from a bottom position. She's also good in terms of her top position, ground and pound looking improved. And then obviously we know her ability to find submissions land them, finish fights, things like that. She's very dangerous with her grappling for sure. Xiaonan Yan, very dangerous with her striking. She is on a 2-fight losing streak after losing to Marina Rodriguez back in March. That was a close fight. She's a good striker. She's a good boxer specifically. She puts her all into her strike. She comes in with that constant aggression, constant pace, quickness and footwork looks a little bit improved, at least early in the fight. Good jab, decent combination. She is going to mix in some kicks, but look for essentially boxing only from her. You see the takedown numbers there, 1 per fight, but that's not realistically an active part of her game. So I would consider her a striker. This is an interesting fight because I think it can go in many different directions, directions that can't really accurately be foreseen, in my opinion. I thought Tecia Torres would severely outstrike Mackenzie Dern, but Mackenzie Dern showed improvements, maybe not to look the cleanest in striking herself, but to not allow Tecia Torres to severely outstrike her. So that's definitely something on her end in terms of showing the improved striking. Yan Xiaonan, still very much the better striker though. And she was even giving Marina Rodriguez problems, and we know Marina Rodriguez in a lot of ways is a pure striker. We know that Mackenzie Dern is by far the better grappler, but it's always a question of whether she can actually bring the fight to the ground. Ultimately, I'm going to trust Mackenzie Dern and her overall game plan to get it done. I think Yan Xiaonan is a bit one-dimensional in her approach, and I think Yan will be actively thinking about trying to avoid really any clinch situation with Mackenzie Dern. That might make her think a little bit too much, make her a little bit hesitant to want to engage, or make her a little bit hesitant to resort to sometimes a clinch game that she likes to show in terms of activity against the cage. Mackenzie Dern, on the other hand, I can see her trying to force that pace, somehow getting a fight to the ground, where again, we know that she's a serious threat. Ultimately, I think it's going to be a messy fight. Just it's going to be a sloppy looking fight. It's going to be hard from a scoring perspective. But I like Mackenzie Dern to pull through. And worst case scenario, I like the judges to side for Mackenzie Dern if all else fails. So I'm looking at Mackenzie Dern to get this done, but this one's just not one that I'm betting on at all.
Yeah, this is a real contrast in styles. We got probably the best grappler in the division in Mackenzie Dern. And then we're looking at probably the best, what division is this again?
115.
Yeah, probably the best striker or top 3 striker in that division in Xiaonan Yan. So Mackenzie's going to have a big advantage on the ground. Yan's going to have a big advantage on the feet. Against in the Marina Rodriguez fight, Yan got robbed in that fight. She definitely won that fight. But again, judges, it's a hard job what they do, but Yan definitely got screwed over that night. But yeah, this fight, it could come down to can Yan stop the takedown? We've seen Torres, not Torres. What's that champion's name? That guy. What's the champion? Esparza. We've seen Esparza utilize the takedowns on, and she got a lot of takedowns that fight and was able to kind of pretty much just hold her down each round, and she won an easy fight, Esparza against Yan. The difference is Dern doesn't have that great takedown that Esparza has, that great double leg. Dern has a hard time getting these fights to the mat, but once she gets it down there, she definitely shows that she has a higher level of jiu-jitsu than every fighter in the UFC in that division. Like, she's on a next level. She's on another planet. And again, she can just get her down and win the fight. It could be just one takedown, but I'm not sure Dern can get this fight to the mat. Yan is coming into this fight knowing she's fighting the best grappler in the division. That's the focus this whole fight camp. You got to think right in. Yan can keep it on the feet against a fighter that doesn't have the best takedowns. She's gonna cruise, right? So I'm gonna go with Xiaonan Yan here. I think she at one point she was a real prospect for the UFC before she lost to Esparza. She was close to getting a title shot. until he aspires to fight. Um, yeah, I like her in this spot. I think she gets it done. I think she keeps on the feet and gets the win here. So I'm gonna go Yan to get the win.
All right, let's take it to Vegas and let's consider some underdog action. I, of course, will let you know the each underdog in each situation. So we have Guido Cannetti versus Randy Costa. Of course, we have Chelsea Chandler as a slight underdog versus Julija Stoliarenko. We have Philipe Lins. Brendan Allen is the slight underdog versus Krzysztof Jotko. Jesse Ronson, Jessica Penne, Aleksei Oleinik, Viacheslav Borshchev, Daniel Santos, Don Shainis, Trevin Jones, Francisco Trinaldo, and Xiaonan Yan.
Yeah, I like Chelsea Chandler.
All right, Chelsea Chandler. We see the odds there. As such, 1.95 on that one. For me, my underdog is going to be Brendan Allen. So that's what I'm going to consider at 2.0. So roughly the same odds for each of those underdogs. And in terms of favorites or parlay pieces, what are you considering?
You know, I'm gonna pass it to you, man. I'm making my picks right now. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I'll take an extra few seconds in that case. So in terms of my picks, I know you gave the kind of caution on this. I understand the caution, but I'm still going with John Castañeda. I just feel like he's the cleaner striker. Really impressed me in his last fight. I think he's going to get it done, especially stylistically in this one. I'm also looking at Raoni Barcelos to get back in the win column. I mean, this was the guy that you looked at as a dark horse before his two losses there. So I definitely think he's going to get back into the win column versus a fairly straightforward opponent. And I'm looking at Randy Brown, 32 years old versus 44, 6 inches in height, 8 inches in reach, dark horse in the division. I think he gets it done. Pretty solid parlay the way that I'm seeing it, at least on paper. That's going to be a 2.81. So that means that $100 is going to return $281. And for our bigger betters, $250 is going to return $704.
okay, I'm rolling with Joaquim Silva, Sodiq Yusuff, and Randy Brown.
All right, so those three would be a 2.47. So in that case, $100 will return $247 in total. And for our bigger betters, $250 will return $617. Let's officially sign off on that note. Again, we want to hear from you in the comments for this video. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video as well. And most importantly, make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. This has been UFC Fight Night, Mackenzie Dern versus Xiaonan Yan. Full card prediction video by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. Of course, he goes by Zan, I go by Harris, and in our usual fashion, let's get this money.
Let's do it.